Hey, how's it going, guys? Ancient Grid here, back with another Wonderlands build video, and today we are going over Hammer Staff. Now, this is an old hammer build I've had for a little bit, and it's still really fun. And I've kind of tweaked some things to make it unique from other builds. Some things not optimal, but it is fun to be different than my other builds. So if you've played my other builds and you want something different, I do have options for that. But if this is like your first time coming in and this is new, then I will also explain the optimal route. So yeah, there is some gear flexibility as well, which is very nice. Not too much, but there's like some armor and weapons and shields that you can do, which makes it very, very good and very useful. This is very tanky build as well. It is pretty hard to die on this. So if you played my Clawbringer, then you will know that was very glass cannon. Now this version is similar, less hammer damage, but it is a lot more of survivability. So if that build turned you off because of the glass cannon part, this build is probably for you. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you haven't, make sure to like and subscribe. Alright, and for the gear here, we have the live wire. This is the main weapon I hold. I just really like the live wire in this build because we swing fast. You could use a guns with wings. If you're not with melee bolts, that's probably what I would use because you won't have too much time using the scalawag before you're hitting enemies. But scalawag or guns with wings will also work if you want to have those bolts, which do incredible for damage. But I just didn't feel like using it on here, so I used the live wire, which is also still incredibly strong. I used spellcast all damage. You see I use all here. Stab-O-Matic is mainly for just ranged enemies. And then here we have a Tooth Raider. This is for bossing mainly. You don't always need it, but it is very nice to have. And then I have a Queen's Cry here. This is very fun because it's just a utility option. The tasers you can shoot at your feet and it will proc it'll damage you, which can proc amnesia, which is very, very nice. So I like having that. It doesn't do enough damage to like break your ward for like Cursed Wit, even a low level one, but that it's just really an amnesia procer, which can kind of end up breaking your Cursed Wit sometimes, or just keeping Cursed Wit down. So that's why I like using that. Here we have a Goblin Pickaxe. We use the 21% crit, or you could use a 19% crit because we want maximum crit damage for our hammer to crit. And then we use Warrior on it. Any element will work. I like using Fire because it's a common health bar, but that's definitely not what you have to use. Personally, I like using the Banshee. It's less hammer damage and probably less DPS, but it's different than my other builds, like I was explaining in my intro. So if you want something different, you can use the Banshee, but Goblin Pickaxe is definitely optimal because it also gives spell cooldown, skill cooldown, and move speed, and that move speed goes into amnesia. So that's why it's the option. And of course we use the melee consecutive hits enchant because that will buff the hammer, and it's just a good damage source. Here we use a Cursed Wit. Now for most builds I would not recommend using selective amnesia and Cursed Wit, but this has a bunch of damage reduction to where the Cursed Wit dot is pretty much cut in half. The reason why you don't want to use these two is because selective amnesia gets your damage for the dot, and so it'll get 100% damage that Cursed Wit gives you. So that can make it very deadly for some builds. But with all our damage reduction, we actually get very good use out of Cursed Wit. So you could use that. You could also use a Body Rune, but Cursed Wit is very fun for this and very strong. We use the low health enchant to also help with survivability. I usually do not die if I have a dot on me with this on. With this enchant, it is just so good. And then it gives some extra all damage when you're that low, which is also very nice. We go to Sacrificial Skeep for extra damage. You could use a Barbalode, not extra damage, extra survivability. Um, and then we use a skeet for extra survivability. Definitely not needed, but it's very nice. A barber load would also work well if you use a guns with wings or scalawag. But I don't like using that. And then just can help with if we're low on health and a very strong dot. Skeep can keep us alive, and I have had some moments where Skeep is definitely saved my life sometimes. So we go that because with amnesia dots, you can have some strong dots, even with damage reduction. It can be tough sometimes. You want to use lightning damage for a hammer or just max element of your melee weapon. I like my hammer doing a lot of damage, so I go the lightning damage. And then you want, of course, Clawbringer power for hammer. Berserker power won't do that much. It'll boost blast shield, which is nice, but boosting the bonus element doesn't do that much. And then you want double all damage because staff spec damage doesn't do anything on this build because we're not focusing on a chemical agent because we're not using staff advancer. And then here we use an empowering sigil. You want a mix of damage and damage radius and cooldown rate. This will insta freeze enemies, which will give full icebreaker, and it will give the melee versus frozen enemies bonus, which is just insanely strong. But that's why we go that there. You could use a Tidebreaker with Soaked, but I don't use it here. I really like Empowering Sigil because it also blocks some projectiles, which can mean less amnesia, but we have Queen's Cry as well if we really need to. We go action skill start all damage. We'll have that proccing often because of throwing our hammer. But other enchants you could use is Spellcast melee or action skill start melee. But optimally, when I was doing up the math, Empowering Sigil came out to be better just because of all our bonuses, but it will also just kind of matter on what bonuses you have. So if you really want to min-max it and you're farming your own gear, I would recommend if you're choosing between two, definitely like sit down and math it all out. You don't really need to because you can still do damage, and I've done plenty of damage without mathing it out, but it is fun to math it out sometimes and get as much damage as possible. Now here I like to use the selective amnesia, but technically for peak damage, you will want to use a Tyrant's Truth. This will get rid of Wyvern, which will mean sometimes it can be harder to proc Awe, but we have this shock here, and I like to use the fire weapon here, so that helps a lot. You could also shoot the live wire, but I don't recommend it for what we use in this build. You want to go optimally move speed, area damage, and melee crit chance with Clawbringer. Now it also can roll with Oath of Thunder and Rebuke. Rebuke is nice for damage reduction for Amnesia Dot, but Oath of Thunder is just better, stronger bonus element, which can be really nice. I'd say optimally you want Iron Squall just because of swing speed for DPS, but you definitely don't need it. But I would definitely recommend Clawbringer because boosting Blast Shield Sum can be really, really nice. Other stuff you could use is all damage or melee damage roll. But this is what I like to use here. So we go Selective Amnesia because one, it's really good damage. Also, it's really, really good at keeping down Cursed Wit. And also, it's just a fun flex using Cursed Wit and Amnesia together, where a lot of builds can't. Yeah, I've used Cape of Tides. I've used Tyrant's Truth. It all does well. But I like using Selective Amnesia here. And then here, we like to use the shell casing rings with the gun is low in ammo. And that's really, really good for Livewire. Not as good if you definitely not good if you're using Scalawag or Guns with Wings. Really only if you're using Livewire. But you should just go for any good ring. But optimally, I like to use these. So what you do is you'll shoot your Livewire until it says like on your screen to reload. And then you're good there. And then you get 66% bonus, which is a lot. I think this melee damage gets to around 40%, which is good. It's close to double. And then you want to mix it between melee damage, melee crit damage, and melee crit chance. Action skill cooldown could be okay. So can spell radius, but definitely focus the crit damage and crit chance. I mix it between the two, um, just because I feel like getting's good for crit chance, but it doesn't really matter. The other really good one would be the um, dungeon rings when you're in a dungeon, because that's always active in chaos chambers, and I would think mirrors, but I'm actually not completely sure. And then for the skill tree here, it's a bit weird here. We do some things for survivability. Of course, we use Storm Dragon's Judgment. We go Oath of Thunder. We go 5 points here because we use melee. We go 1 Oath of Fire, so if we shoot our gun, it'll proc a fire dot, which will help with awe, but we're not using any guns for damage. Then we go Dragon Aura for damage. Now, I like to use Radiance when I'm going with Clawbringer and Brrzerker, because this max ward capacity will go into an armor defense, which I really, really like, and definitely helps with survivability. You could put between Rebuke and Radiance on this build. Radiance gives us damage reduction, which is pretty nice. We only get like 9.1%, but it does help, especially for the Amnesia dot. And then it can reflect lightning damage, which can proc a dot to proc awe. So that's also nice. So having at least 1 point in there can be useful. Dedication isn't that good. Even if we were having full ward and not using Curse Wit, it's 30% on depending on how high your ward is, which sometimes it could be down a lot. And then Storm Dragon's Judgment cooldown is so little that it does not matter, because you throw it and then you call it right back. You don't leave it out because the ability damage doesn't do that much. And then we use Firebolt for helping proc awe, and then Storm Breath, which gives damage reduction and also helps proc awe. And then of course we go through an awe, because this crit damage is only additive with the Shrine crit, and then it gives really good crit chance and a lot of it. We don't go Indomitable because we use Curse Wit, but if you don't want to use Curse Wit and you want to use like a body rune, then take 1 point out of awe and put it in Indomitable. You still don't have to, but it's very nice sometimes and can save your life. And then for Berserker, we go 3 Unyielding and then 2 Savagery. Then we go Max Old Ways. This is also more damage reduction, which goes into helping half the Curse Wit with Amnesia damage. I think we do have like around 100% when I was adding it all up. So that's why I say half. So, because damage reduction is weird to where 100% doesn't mean you take no damage. It means half of your damage. And then we go Icebreaker because it's the pure molt of damage. And then Cold Snap gives us move speed and frost efficiency. An armor defense, great for survivability. Blood Frenzy, good for survivability. You could put it in Savagery, but I prefer to have it in Blood Frenzy for more survivability. We have Relentless Rage for survivability. You could also put Blood Frenzy points into Ancient Fury because it gets area damage, but I'd rather not. And then we go Point and Blast Shield, and these Iron Skull points are from armor. And then here for our hero points, we have max crit damage, max HP and ward, and then the rest in the spell cooldown. This is really good for survivability with Amnesia dot, and this is crit damage, which should happen often. Without bonuses, we have 75.4% crit chance, so that's really nice. And then spell cooldown for us, spending our spells more. And then one last thing I forgot to mention, why we use an Ascended Curse Wit instead of a low level or non-chaos tiered one is because of an armor defense. Because it gets shield, we use that, and because of Amnesia, it's usually down often. So I usually don't notice like Curse Wit being down too much or not being down too much. So that's why we use Ascended, because I feel like someone would wonder why for that. I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. This is definitely one of my oldest builds. I don't play it as much, but I have found more enjoyment out of it after using it with some Banshee, just because it feels different to use than crazy pickaxe fast weapon all the time. Since I use so many Clawbringer builds, it will always be like the best Clawbringer weapon. And just because it's a fast moving weapon with good crit parts and good DPS, it'll always be without any changes. It'll always be one of the best melee weapons. As you can see with how often I use it. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this build. The save file will be in my Discord, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.